Hello and welcome. Tonight, I will tell you a strange story about the way we spend our time. It is a story for anyone who feels that the clock is always running too fast. Our story begins in the city of Silverton. Silverton was a modern city of tall glass towers and gray steel bridges. It was a place where people walked fast, talked fast, and ate fast. In Silverton, the most important rule was simple: time is money. And nobody liked to lose money. Julian was a perfect son of the city. He was 30 years old, rich, successful, and very, very busy. He was an efficiency expert. His job was to teach big companies how to do more work in less time. Julian lived his life by the clock. He checked his expensive gold watch every 5 minutes. Tick, tock, tick, tock. He hated waiting. Waiting for coffee was painful. Waiting for an elevator was torture. To Julian, a quiet moment was a wasted moment. On a cold Tuesday afternoon, Julian stood in a graveyard. A light rain was falling on the black umbrellas. It was a funeral of his grandfather, Elias. Julian looked at his watch. He tapped his foot on the wet grass. He had an important business meeting in 45 minutes. Hurry up, he thought, looking at the priest. I am wasting time. When the ceremony finally ended, a lawyer with a serious face walked up to Julian. He did not give Julian a check for $1 million. He did not give him the keys to a house. He handed Julian an old, heavy book wrapped in brown paper. Your grandfather left this for you, Julian, the lawyer said softly. He said it was his most valuable possession. Julian took the package. It felt strangely heavy in his hands, and it felt warm, even in the cold rain. He tore off the paper. The cover was made of dark, scratched leather. On the front, there was one word stamped in gold letters: the ledger. Julian frowned. He threw the book into his bag and checked his watch again. He did not know that this evening would change everything. He thought he had just inherited a notebook. He was wrong. Julian unlocked the door to his apartment. It was a beautiful apartment on the 40th floor. It had white walls, white furniture, and a huge window that looked over the city. It was expensive, clean, and completely silent. He threw his keys on the table. He was tired, but he did not rest. He opened his laptop to check his emails. Then he remembered the heavy book in his bag. What is this thing? He muttered. He pulled the leather book out and placed it on his glass desk. The room was dark, lit only by the blue light of his computer screen. Julian opened the cover. The pages were yellow and smelled like old paper. At first, the pages looked blank. But as Julian watched, ink began to appear on the paper. It was not handwriting. It looked like the ink was bleeding up from inside the page. It wrote today's date. Then it began to list Julian's day. 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., commuting in traffic. Anger at other drivers. Cost, 2 hours. Life value, 0. 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., work meetings. Checking emails. Stress, cost, 10 hours. Life value, 0. 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., funeral. Checking watch, impatience. Cost, 1 hour. Life value, 0. Julian blinked. He felt a cold shiver go down his back. This is a joke, he said. I made $2,000 today. How is the value 0? He flipped the pages backward to the old entries. His grandfather's entries from years ago. The handwriting was different there. June 12th, sat on the porch. Watched the rain fall. Cost, 1 hour. Life value, high. August 4th, drank tea with Sarah. Listened to her story. Cost, 2 hours. Life value, infinite. Julian felt a knot in his stomach. He was a rich man in the city, but according to this book, he was a beggar. He had spent his whole day, but he had purchased nothing of value. He tried to close the book. I don't have time for magic tricks, he said nervously. But just before the cover closed, he saw something at the bottom of the page. It was a number in red ink. It was not counting up. It was counting down. Tick-tock. He thought he could just put the book away and ignore it, but the numbers on the page were moving faster than his watch. The next morning, Julian woke up with a plan. He was a businessman, and he knew how to solve problems. He looked at the book on his desk. "It is just a system," Julian said to himself. "It is an algorithm. I just need to input the right data to get a high score." He decided to have the most productive, expensive, and impressive day possible. First, he went to his exclusive gym. It cost $500 a month. He ran on the treadmill for an hour. He ran fast. He sweated. While he ran, he listened to business news on his headphones and replied to emails on his phone. He did 3 things at once. This is efficiency, he thought. This must be high value. He checked the book. Activity, running while checking stocks. Value, 0. Julian was angry. Fine, he thought. Maybe it wants luxury. For lunch, he took a client to the most expensive restaurant in the city. He ordered the steak. He ordered the best wine. He paid the bill with his gold credit card. It was a $300 lunch. He opened the book under the table. Activity, eating expensive lunch while thinking about the deal. Value, 0. The red numbers at the bottom of the page were counting down faster now. Tick, tick, tick. It was like a leak in a boat. His time was disappearing, and he could not stop it. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a picture of his sister, Sarah. She was calling him. Julian looked at the phone. He felt annoyed. Sarah liked to talk for a long time. She liked to talk about art and feelings and the weather. I don't have time for chit-chat, Julian thought. I am losing life points. I need to fix this book. He pressed the red button. Decline. He put the phone in his pocket and walked back to his office. He felt determined. He thought he just needed to try harder, spend more money, and run faster. He thought he could buy more time. He was wrong. The book did not accept his currency. The next morning, Julian did not wake up to the sound of his alarm. He woke up because his body hurt. His bones felt heavy, like he had carried a heavy stone all night. He walked slowly to the bathroom to wash his face. He splashed cold water on his skin and looked up at the mirror. Julian screamed. The man in the mirror was not 30 years old. The man in the mirror looked 40 or maybe 45. His skin was pale and gray. There were deep lines around his eyes, and his hair, his perfect black hair, was turning gray at the temples. "No," Julian whispered. "This is impossible." He ran to the desk and opened the leather book. The pages were warm to the touch. The red numbers at the bottom were moving very fast now. Current status, critical. Life value, 0. Julian finally understood the terrifying truth. The book was not just recording his time. It was feeding on it, because he was spending his hours on things with 0 value. His time was simply vanishing. It was gone forever. He was aging faster because he was living an empty life. "I am dying," he said, his voice shaking. "I am rich, but I am running out of time." He looked at his gold watch. It looked like a toy now. It looked useless. He realized he could not buy his way out of this. He could not hire an expert to fix his gray hair. He needed the one person who understood the value of time. He needed the person whose name was written in the book as infinite value. He grabbed his car keys. He did not brush his hair. He did not put on a tie. He ran out of his expensive apartment and jumped into his car. He drove fast through the city. The rain hit the windshield. Smack, smack, smack. The gray towers of the city blurred past him. He needed to get out of the fast lane. He drove to the edge of the city, where the streets were narrow and the trees were old. He stopped his car in front of a small, colorful house with a wild garden. It was Sarah's house. Julian stood in the rain, breathless and terrified. He looked at his shaking hands. He looked at the gray hair in the reflection of the car window. He raised his hand to knock on the door, but he hesitated. He did not know if he still had enough time to ask for forgiveness. Sarah opened the door. She was wearing an old sweater covered in yellow and blue paint. She looked at Julian, at his gray face, his shaking hands, and his terrified eyes. She did not scream. She did not ask about his bank account. She simply opened the door wider. "Come in, Jules," she said softly. Sarah's house was warm. It smelled of dried herbs, turpentine, and baking bread. It was cluttered with canvases, books, and plants. To Julian, it looked messy. It looked inefficient. "Help me?" Julian gasped. "My time. It's running out. The book. It's killing me." Sarah nodded, as if she understood. She led him to the kitchen and pointed to a wooden chair. "Sit," she said. "I can't sit," Julian shouted. "I need to do something. I need to fix this. We need a strategy." "The strategy," Sarah said firmly, "is to sit and wait for the water to boil." She put a kettle on the stove. Then she sat down at her easel and started to paint. She dipped her brush in water. Swish, swish. She applied a stroke of blue to the canvas. Slowly, carefully, Julian sat on the wooden chair. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. His body began to vibrate with anxiety. He tapped his foot on the floor. Tap, 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 tap. He reached for his pocket to check his phone, but he remembered he had left it in the car. His hand twitched. "This is a waste of time." His brain screamed. "Do something. Run. Fix it." The silence in the kitchen was heavy. The only sound was the soft hiss of the kettle getting warm. To Julian, the silence felt like noise. It was a loud, screaming silence. He felt like his skin was burning. He was addicted to speed, and this slowness was painful. "How do you do this?" he asked, his voice cracking. "How do you just sit?" Sarah did not look up from her painting. "I am not just sitting, Julian. I am noticing the light on the table. I am listening to the wind. I am living in this minute, not the next one." Julian took a deep breath. He tried to stop his foot from tapping. He looked at the steam rising from the kettle. For 1 second, just 1 second, he stopped fighting. He stopped planning. He wanted to scream at the silence. But then, for the first time in years, he really looked at his sister's face. He saw the peace in her eyes. And he realized that while he was racing toward death, she was slowly enjoying her life. Evening came to the small house. Outside, the rain stopped and the world was quiet. Inside, Sarah poured 2 cups of herbal tea. The steam rose in the air, white and soft. Julian sat at the wooden table. The leather book lay open in front of him. The red numbers at the bottom of the page were glowing now. Time remaining, 1 hour. 1 hour. Julian had exactly 1 hour left before his account was empty. He did not know what would happen when the clock hit 0. Would he die? Would he disappear? Suddenly, a loud noise broke the silence. Beezizizizdy, beezizizdy. It was Julian's phone. He had left it in his coat, but he could hear it vibrating against the wood of the chair. He pulled it out. The screen was bright and blinding. Notification, urgent, the Meridian deal. Sign now or lose everything. Julian's heart started to hammer in his chest. This was the deal of his life. It was worth millions of dollars. If he answered the phone, he could save his career. He could save his reputation. But he would have to leave right now. He would have to drive back to the city, back to the noise, back to the stress. He stood up. It was a reflex. His body wanted to run toward the money. I have to take this," Julian said. He looked at the door. Sarah did not stop him. She just held her cup of tea and looked at him with sad, kind eyes. "Do you, Julian? Is that what you have to do?" Julian looked at the phone. Answer, answer, answer. Then he looked at the book. 58 minutes. He realized this was a final test. The book was asking him a question. What is your time worth? If he left now, he would be rich. But the gray man in the mirror would take over completely. He would be rich, successful, and empty. If he stayed, he would lose the deal. He would lose the money. But he would have 1 hour of tea with his sister. Julian looked at the bright screen of the phone. Then he looked at the warm fire in the fireplace. I can be rich and dead, he thought, or I can be poor and alive. His thumb hovered over the screen. His hand was shaking. The tension in the room was electric. Then Julian made his choice. He did not swipe answer. He pressed the side button and held it down. The screen went black. He turned the phone off completely. He put the cold, black phone on the table. He looked at Sarah. He sat back down in the wooden chair. Let the deal burn, Julian said softly. I want to hear the rest of your story. The hour passed. Usually, an hour for Julian felt like 10 minutes. It usually disappeared in a blur of emails and phone calls. But this hour was different. Julian and Sarah drank their tea. They did not talk about business. They did not talk about money. They talked about their grandfather, Elias. They remembered how he used to smell like pipe tobacco and rain. They laughed about the time he tried to bake a cake and burned the whole kitchen. For the first time in years, Julian did not look at his watch. He did not tap his foot. He was not thinking about the next moment. He was completely inside this moment. Suddenly, the old clock on Sarah's wall chimed. Dong, dong, dong. It was 9 p.m. The hour was over. Julian froze. He gripped the edge of the table. He waited for the pain. He waited for his heart to stop. He waited for the darkness to take him. 1 second passed, then 2, then 10. He was still breathing. The fire was still warm. Sarah was still smiling at him. Slowly, terrifyingly, Julian looked down at the leather book on the table. The angry red numbers were gone. The countdown had vanished. Instead, the page was glowing with a soft, beautiful light. New words were appearing on the paper, written in shimmering gold ink. Activity, conversation with sister. Cost 1 hour. Life value, infinite. Julian touched the gold letters. They were warm. He realized the truth then. The ledger was not a curse. It was a teacher. It did not want him to save time. It did not want him to hoard time like gold coins. It wanted him to spend it, but to spend it on things that mattered. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. His hair was still gray. The lines on his face were still deep. The book did not give him back the years he had wasted. That time was gone forever. The magic could not fix the past. But the panic was gone. The heavy weight in his chest was gone. Are you okay? Sarah asked gently. Julian closed the heavy book. He smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes. I lost a deal, Sarah, he said. I lost millions of dollars tonight. And I have gray hair at 30 years old. He took a sip of his tea. It tasted sweet. But I think I am finally rich. Let's look at Julian's journey one more time. We will tell the story simply, so we can remember the lesson of the ledger. Julian was a rich man who lived in a fast city. He loved money, and he hated waiting. To Julian, every minute was $1, and he wanted to save every dollar. He was always running, always checking his watch, and always stressed. One day, his grandfather died. He left Julian a mysterious old book called the Ledger. Julian thought it was just a notebook, but when he opened it, he saw magic. The book did not count his money. It counted the value of his time. The book showed a scary truth. When Julian worked too hard or worried too much, the value was 0 because his life was empty. The book began to take his time away. Julian started to look old and gray. He was dying because he was rushing. Julian tried to fix the problem with money. He bought expensive food. He went to an expensive gym. But the book did not care about money. The numbers counted down faster. Julian was terrified. He drove to his sister Sarah's house. Sarah was an artist. She lived a slow life. She taught Julian to sit still. She taught him to watch the steam rise from a tea kettle. At first, Julian felt pain. He wanted to check his phone. He wanted to run. Finally, Julian faced a big choice. He had 1 hour left. A big business deal called his phone. If he answered, he would be rich. But his time would run out. If he stayed with his sister, he would lose the money. Julian turned off his phone. He chose his sister. He chose love. When the hour ended, the book changed. The red ink turned to gold. The value was infinite. Julian learned that we cannot buy more time, but we can make our time valuable by slowing down and loving the people around us. My name is Elias. They buried my body on a rainy Tuesday, but I did not leave immediately. I stayed to watch over my grandson, Julian. I stood beside him at the funeral. I saw him tapping his foot on the wet grass. I saw him checking his gold watch. He looked so successful in his expensive suit, but to me, he looked like a man who was starving. He was starving for time, but he kept throwing away. I knew I had to save him. That is why I left him the ledger. It was a dangerous gift, I know. It is a terrifying thing to see your life counted in red numbers. But I knew Julian. I knew he was stubborn. He would never listen to an old man's advice. He needed to see the truth with his own eyes. He needed to feel the fear of the end. I watched him for those few days. It broke my heart. I saw him running on that treadmill, trying to outrun his own shadow. I saw him buying expensive dinners, thinking he could purchase a soul with a credit card. I wanted to shout at him. I wanted to say, "Stop running, Julian. You are missing the sunset. You are missing the taste of your food." But I could not speak. I could only wait. When he finally drove to Sarah's house, I felt a spark of hope. Sarah always understood. She was like me. She knew that a painted flower was worth more than a fast car. Then came the final test. The phone rang. Beezizdi, beezizdi. I saw the light of the screen reflect in Julian's eyes. It was the devil of the modern world, calling him back to the noise. I held my breath. I watched his thumb hover over the button. "Please, Julian," I whisper from the shadows. "Choose the tea. Choose the fire. Choose your sister." When the screen went black, I felt a wave of peace wash over the room. I saw the red numbers vanish. I saw the gold ink appear, the ink that only appears for moments of true love and connection. He has gray hair now, my Julian. He looks older. But when I look at him now, I don't see a starving man anymore. I see a man who is full. My work is done.